I'm Jax. I was diagnosed at the age of 4 with autism, a neurodevelopmental condition that has greatly affected my perspective on life in a way that perhaps is invincible to most. In this talk, I will be discussing internalized ableism set to neurotypical standards and able standards, and why it's ever more imperative for us to dismantle these beliefs. The reason I come onto the stage to speak to you about this topic is because within my life, I have observed a silent narrative wherein me and other disabled peers are unable to keep working in a conventional society, but cannot find a social opportunity to highlight this issue effectively. For instance, I'm less able to extrapolate information from a given social context, leading me to have outbursts wherein I mostly misjudge a social situation to be terrible, when really, it's fine. Language surrounding disability actually has been around for decades, but not so much normalized. It took 16 years for me to outright realize and communicate healthily to someone that I'm disabled and thus I experience outbursts, and for me to be understood by the other party. Now, this isn't to undermine the efforts of friends, families, loved ones. It was just that we were more accustomed to learning through general consensus. In the process, neglecting some important conversations to be had within these minorities. Because of this, it seems hard for me to verbalize my needs, as if there's a sense of shame weighing myself down when I speak. Because there seems to be nothing to complain about on the surface. How dare I, a student with already great academics at an already competitive school, complain about my life? How dare I complain when I already have it so good? The kind of shame I described earlier exactly entails internalized ableism, which refers to when a person who is disabled internalizes beliefs about their own, leaving them to believe that they are incompetent or perhaps need to compensate for their own disability. One study shows what ramifications this mindset can have on hindering healthy development. The study gathered 21 disabled participants to speak about internalized ableism and some other topics. Though I want to zoom in on to some of the quotes the participants have stated when asked how they feel about their disability. One participant said, "People treat me like I'm stupid, which I'm not." Another participant said, "Yes, I have strong beliefs about not wrapping your child in cotton wool. Just let your disabled kids have challenges, and yes, they have to work twice as hard. Just work harder." Instantly, these responses frame disability as a burden, a challenge to be overcome ASAP. How did we arrive at this conclusion so quickly? Within the same study, participants also cited parental and medical expectations as a driving motivator behind their internalized ableism. To quote another participant, "It's like if you're born disabled, your parents need education on everything that you can do. Not that the doctor comes in and points out every dysfunctional aspect of you, and in the process painting a grim future for your development." What the doctor should instead do is to come in and provide resources for the parents and be like, well, actually, from what we've observed, your child can accomplish a lot as well despite this label. The focus is too often on what is wrong with the individual, but not what the individual can accomplish. As shown above, internalized ableism is mainly created from societal pressures, as it's a form of shame, mainly stemming from the fact that society values productivity and collectivism, marginalizing those who can't meet able standards as well. When reading this study, I find myself heavily relating to some of the quotes the participants have stated, and not wanting to be different. I think while I've mainly grown very accustomed to being always a little tone deaf socially, I've always wondered if a neurotypical life would indeed be easier. Maybe then I wouldn't have to worry so much about socializing to the point of near burnout. Furthermore, as autism is mainly an invisible disability, the things I do struggle with seem incomprehensible by first glance. With only a picture of me, most people won't know that I've been mainly dependent on adult guidance for every social nuance I've encountered up until I was about the age of 14. They don't know that actually navigating these nuances can have such a big toll on my body that it demands more and more rest as I get older. Orally. And sometimes, I often get told that what I am dealing with is simply what everyone else deals with too. And for a while, I believed that too, no matter how anxious the thought makes me feel, as if I can't know myself anymore. This affirmation of your normal, though, should feel affirming and kind, based on everything I've said above about internalized ableism. But it doesn't. It simply gives me an indication that, yes, I'm surviving, and I'm not yet a social failure. I'm succeeding at not being different. Morally, the goal of framing autistic and neurodivergent traits as different, and also adding the goal of being normal, frames these traits as prey to be found in a duck hunt. If ever we are caught in a vulnerable or undesirable state, we might as well be better off dead. In saying all this, my goal is not to gain sympathy from the audience, but to understand that this is a pattern that we need to command option escape from. To start, we can first acknowledge our own experiences and adjust accordingly. If, like me, you are disabled, I encourage you to be mindful of your limits and take due rest. I know that just by echoing the classic love yourself rhetoric is not going to be effective in instigating change, but there are real consequences to driving yourself the other way. In 2021, Van Damme, a psychotherapist, published an article accumulating existing research that strongly suggested burnout can have lifelong effects that linger even after a person has supposedly recovered from burnout. These effects include greater fatigue and a lesser ability to complete and plan tasks ahead of time. And the reason I say we is because as I stand here as a speaker, I know that I'm not perfect. I have a tendency to overwork myself and try to fit in. And I'm only beginning to see the consequences of doing so. And this research is also coupled with the fact that neurodivergent and disabled people are more susceptible to burnout because of how we have to accommodate the world around us daily. So to everyone out there, disabled or not, it's pretty clear that what I've talked about up there affects me, but burnout also affects you to some extent too. And so with that in mind, how can we apply practical change? There are, of course, many ways to go about this. But one method I suggest is to do some internal self-reflection on the topic. I've just told you a lot about internalized ableism and how it's basically self-hatred rebranded. But it takes a lot of effort to really reflect on these values, and only by reflection can we understand how deep-rooted these values truly are. Because this issue affects me personally, I find it useful to do some deep reflection on it. I'll testify that it won't be easy. It, of course, takes the necessary time to self-reflect that not everyone is willing to devote yet. And more often than not, I'll be stuck believing that my feelings were not worth the time to unpack. Perhaps the time could be spent on something more productive and practical. Yet, even in my worst days, reflecting on myself has proven to reap invaluable benefits, such as greater clarity on social situations, enabling me to have better course of action. And I certainly don't regret that. The aftermath of our never-ending perseverance is very real. But it is up to us whether to make the change for the better or not. I hope one day we can all come to the realization that the grass can be greener on the other side. Thank you.